and I am Erin Shaver. I'm the Executive Director of the Planning Department here in Logansport and Cass County. It's still not loud enough. I don't want to hear my voice. Okay. Anyway, so we're here today to talk about two opportunities that would be great for our community. And not only that, to establish kind of a master plan that we can all work towards even if we don't get these designations or grants. So I'll go to the first one, which is America's Best Communities Grant. This is a national grant that we are applying for. It'll be applying for it on March 25th. Is that correct? 25th or 26th. And basically what it is an economic revitalization prize. So it's what can you do for your community to revitalize it. There's a couple of phases through this process. The first phase is that they will pick 50 people out of the initial, I think 270 can apply. We are one of them. And they are able to choose 50 of them to move forward in the first phase. There's a $35,000 grant in that phase with a $15,000 match. If you move forward with that and are able to be selected for the next 15 finalists, you basically are announced and go to a summit where you are going to speak in front of people, so that should be fun. Then if you're next, the 8 finalists get $100,000 to start implementing their plan, and the final grand prize is either a $1, $2, or $3 million award. What we're focusing on statewide is the Stellar Community Designation. This is a designation, I want to specify that between a grant process. This is to designate our community as stellar. So what that does is allow us to go through these grant processes, and the communities and the state organizations already know that we're a stellar community in applying for additional grants. So it's just a designation. These are some of the communities that have currently been awarded this designation. Wabash, Delphi, you can kind of know those in our region. And then Richmond and North Vernon. So that's been happening for about 4 or 5 years, and this is our second time applying for this designation. We wanted to talk a little bit about how this works. I know people get a little concerned about grant money. Basically, the money is out there for specific reasons, and so we wanted to go through a few slides, and I'm going to kind of turn my back a little bit. But we're going through the Civic Center for the Arts, and we have an actual site plan that I'll go through here in a little bit. But this would go through Okra, Office of Community and Rural Affairs, and they would award up to $1.5 million for such a center. And then there's working with DNR, which is Department of Natural Resources, and they give $1.5 million to $2.5 million for trails and riverfront restoration. Facade restorations is something that we've been working on in our community for quite some time, and want to continue with that and work with Logan's Landing. The housing goes through the Housing and Community Development Authority, and this is a $12 million set aside for multifamily or senior housing. And then the parking garage is something that we're working on as a community. To make all these projects happen, we need to provide the parking for any infill development. Some of the agencies that we're working with the state, and we did actually go to a workshop and be able to meet with these individuals, is the State Tourism Board, and it's basically a technical support. So they basically give you some feedback on your plan. The feedback that we had that day was really great feedback, and they gave us some pointers as well on who to contact to get more information on details in the plan. Volunteerism is another group. Work with Serve Indiana to strengthen the community's volunteering. Active community, work with Indiana State Department of Health to be active in our community. We are actually looking to get active living workshop and aging in place. Business and economic development is another one. This is basically working with the Office of Small Business and Entrepreneurship to create jobs and incentive packages. So I'm going to go through this somewhat quickly. I don't have a pointer. I should have brought my pointer from my bag. But anyway, just to get you referenced here a little bit, you can see this is Market Street here and Broadway. And this is the 4th Street connection. Chris is going to be my pointer. So just first off, what we want to show you is that the blue is existing buildings or lots in the area, and the orange, yellow, is what we are kind of focusing on in this plan. When we applied in 2012, one of the feedbacks that we got from the state is that we had so many projects going on in our community. We weren't focusing on an area that was going to make a huge impact. We had a little bit out at the Hoosier Heartland, a little bit by Ivy Tech, and then some downtown, and then some housing out in other areas of the community. They want to see the biggest impact that you can make for your community, and from that, see the rippled effect throughout your community. So we took that advice. We started talking with the community and different organizations and just trying to figure out what exactly does Logansport need. I think time and time again we hear about not having the facilities to hold more than 300 people at a comfortable seating area with a dance floor and those type of things for weddings. We hear that a lot. We hear about parking downtown a lot, whether it's infill or a new business coming in. We also hear about connectivity. We have 2 trails currently. At the very top you see the Eel River Run Trail that was finished a couple of years ago. I've been here for 10 years, so my years kind of come together. And then on the bottom, the Little Turtle Waterway, which is a nationally award-winning plaza. So we're wanting to make sure that we're connecting up through the rest of our community. Even though we're looking at this huge impact for our downtown, we want to connect up through the rest of our community. One way to do that is connect those trails through 4th Street corridor. This is something that we're focusing on more pedestrian friendly, some bump outs, some things that we can do to make it safer to cross. On that also, we're looking at doing 2-way, and in doing that, being able to get to your destination a little bit better. I know that working at the courthouse, I think I see 10 cars a day driving the wrong way on 4th Street. So it's obviously something that people see as needed, or at least don't understand how to get there. So wayfinding is also something to look into. So that kind of gives you the outer skirts of what we're looking at. We obviously hold our events at the Little Turtle Waterway, most of our events in our community, and we want to make sure that connection is seen also. You can see on the bottom, just I'll follow it all the way up, is the market area where we're focusing on the farmers market on 4th Street. I know probably most of you, because it was in the paper, there was talk about ICDA awards for senior housing on the current farmers market lot, which is in the, can you point to orange there. This would still allow for the parks. Obviously you see we're focusing on just the lot itself, but we also want to provide a permanent place for the farmers market. We know that that's important to our community and important to businesses downtown. So we want to make sure we're working with them to provide that space for them to still be visible. No, go back. Then I'm just kind of working my way up here. You go into the Civic Center for the Arts. And this is the area that we were talking about where we really don't have a place that holds the 600 to 700 to 800 people in comfortably. And so this is the area we're looking at providing that for the community. There would be obviously some artwork in that, some different programs that we could possibly bring to this area, workshops, educational. There's a lot of different programs that we've been working with a lot of different partners on to try to promote this area as something that we can, as a community, use, not just for events, but for everything that we do in our community. Attached to that, I'm gonna go ahead and go back down to the, attached to that, we have really focused on something, and I know that it's kind of been a negative positive for our community, but the carousel. I think a lot of people don't understand that where it is located currently is in the floodplain, so it can't get any grant opportunities to help fund it. And where it is currently, although I like to say, you know, it's kind of where your childhood home was, and you come back and you want it to be there because that's what you remember, and that's just, all those memories come back as soon as you see it. But you got to know that we have to have the best interest for the carousel, you know, when we're looking at this. And it's the visibility that they can have. There's structural maintenance that they have to maintain. And actually, I have some members here from the carousel that I'd asked to come up. Barry, would you come up real quick? I don't think that it's right that I tell you that what the carousel needs. I think that them kind of explaining why they're reasoning to move forward with this plan. So I'll introduce Barry, who's on the carousel board.
Thank you. We were, Carousel Board was approached with this idea probably 3 months ago. And Carousel Board was approached with this idea about maybe 3 months ago. And I don't know, my first thought was no way. But after looking at the situation, being in the floodplain, grant money not available, and also facing an $80,000 new roof repair bill that's needed. We have to do something in that respect. I believe the city and the board did too. The board believed that the city and Logan's Landing had a good idea with branding the city with our carousel. I mean, what does Logansport have? We have the train, and well, we had the train, and we have the carousel. And I say to myself, I'll say that the board unanimously agreed to entertain this idea. Now, right now, we have not made any definite commitments as far as moving the carousel. What we have agreed to do is to entertain the idea. They have said, look, this is what we want to do. Would you entertain the idea of moving the carousel and moving forward with this idea? And we all thought, as a board, yes, this could be a good thing. It'll give the carousel definitely a lot more exposure than where it's at now. It'll get used a lot more. I think this is a feature, it's an attraction for Logansport. People will come to Logansport to see the carousel. Right now, where it's at, I think we're missing, the carousel is missing a big opportunity, and Logansport's missing a big opportunity if it's not put out in the public eye a little bit more than what it is. So, that was kind of our position. Again, we're open to hear as a board. We're always open to hear comments from everyone, but again, it is our job to look out for the best interest of the carousel. And that's what we're doing at this point.
Thank you. One other thing to kind of focus on is that we've been kind of creating we have been creating an art district for the last 6 years. We've put up Lola Art and Design District signs, and we've been doing pocket parks. We've been putting in art, the streetscape, the trees, the lighting. There's just a bunch of stuff that we've been doing to try to create this art district. And so when we started to think of ways that we could come in as a community to finish out this art district, our first thought was, what's the most unique art piece that we have? And that's the carousel. And so why shouldn't it be within this plan? And that's when we went and started talking to them and to see how they felt about the idea. So I'm very glad that they're here, and thank you for your comments. So the next item that we're going to look at is the plaza with the fountain. This is a gathering space area that we're hoping to incorporate more architectural sculptures, art designs, have events there, maybe yoga in the park, who knows. But we've been working with a bunch of different groups to try to figure out how we can program this space and what could be great for the community to be able to use this space. Included in that is a fountain that's basically at grade. It's similar to what you would call a splash pad, but it's just kind of bubbles up so that kids can use it in the summer with the brass ring kind of identity sculpture inside of it to kind of tailor the carousel being down there. So visually you could see that pull from each side, Broadway and Market. Also in that space, we've talked about many other things of what you can do in the winter also. So I'm going to jump across the street to Broadway. This is to finish out the plan. We've been working with the county commissioners on a parking garage idea and the Logan Square individuals of trying to develop a parking garage that may not be the ugly old parking garage that you normally think of, but something that could fit in with the character of our community while providing retail space on the bottom for entrepreneurs and incubator space. So that's something that we know as a community and in our downtown that we want to really wrap the whole square idea around with retail and businesses to really create this destination point. Then I think it's L, is the Logansport building. Most of you know where that is. And we're working with those property owners to provide some sort of housing also in that building with maybe some office space. It's kind of set up for office space already on the bottom floor. So you start creating this really destination of all these different uses and all these points and all of these things that a community needs to really move forward with. And so if you go to the next slide. You can really kind of take that in this rendering. I like to point out that it's a rendering, so you know, they say, oh, they removed the dancing statues. Well, no, it's a rendering. You just can't see them. They're behind the building. No, I don't know. But it's a rendering, so keep that in mind. It's just an idea right now. We're really trying to get feedback of maybe how we should move things on the site. What should we include? I know that we've had people talk about including workout stations along the trail. We've talked about some playground equipment that maybe it's art-based where they can climb on it. Some fencing around to protect the kids and make them stay in the square area. But you can kind of give this sense of feel throughout the community or throughout the downtown of how it all becomes really connective into this area and this centerpiece for our community, which luckily the highways go by. So we're not only doing it for our community, but we're showing visitors coming to our community what we have to offer. And so that's going to help with your economic development and your quality of life items. One thing that I left on the other side because it's kind of hard to see is the transit opportunities. We've been working with the Senior Citizen Center to try to develop a route through our community to make sure that you can get not only here, but throughout the rest of the community. So when visitors come to Logansport, we can kind of get them to the rest of the area. Or if you're at McHale Performing Arts, maybe we can pull you in downtown for an event that's going on that night. Really trying to make that connectivity through the community. So, I think I'm done with my portion of it, thank goodness. But Pam Lehman's gonna come up and kind of talk about our support and what else we've been doing.
Wow, I had my back to the audience and I'm just, yeah, I'm sure. I am just so amazed and thrilled that all of you have come and to hear about these exciting ideas that we have for our community, because we're excited. But, you know, a lot of you and many of you have been involved with me over the years with Dancing with Our Stars. And actually since 2010, that was our first one. And you've heard me repeatedly say, we have a dream. And Kathy and I started the Dancing with Our Stars because we had a dream. And our dream was an art and design district in our downtown. Time and time again, our community has shown amazing support, not only with just supporting Dancing with Our Stars event, but with continued generosity anytime that they're called upon. I thought I'd take a moment and just refresh our memories of some of the accomplishments that we have made in our community and in our downtown. Because sometimes we forget how it did look in comparison to how it looks now. And to give you some statistical things, Logan's Landing has a facade program that's been very successful in our community. And again, it's a program that we've just inched our way through to make improvements on buildings. And since 2007, we have done a total of 36 facades in our community. That includes anything from windows to doors to awnings to painting to brickwork to masonry to stucco work needed. We've even done a new brick facade. I have a whole list of all these wonderful things we've done. Most recently, we're working on a marquee restoration at the State Theater. Along with that, in 2009, now these are kind of, I've told them that I should do them as trivia questions at some point, but I'm going to give you some information of some of the other things that we've accomplished in our community with not only things that have been done, but also awards and designations that we've been given that you may or may not know. In 2009, Logan's Landing was designated as a Preserve America community. And this designation was bestowed upon our community by former First Lady Laura Bush. Logan's Landing has also became nationally accredited by the Indiana Main Street Organization, and we only have about 10% of our main streets in Indiana that have received that designation. In 2010, Logan's Landing won the 2010 Best Downtown Special Event Award from the Indiana Main Street Organization, and that was Dancing with Our Stars. 2010 and 11, 4th Street Revitalization Project. 2010 through 11, we had a renovation of 4 buildings in our downtown due to recap money available and funding. 2011, People's Winery won the 2011 Best Historic Rehabilitation Project Award from the Indiana Main Street Organization. 2011, Little Turtle Waterway Trail extended to 12th Street. 2011, we added new art and design district signage on the light poles in our downtown, which have provided a visual definition of our district. 2011, it was a good year. We've commissioned our first piece of public art, The Dancers, by a local artist, James Galbraith. 2012, we added flowers and hanging baskets to the south side to create that entry into our community. 2012, spring and summer, we installed and completed our first pocket park on Market Street, which provides a visual buffer to the parking lot, and we added the Granite Stars Walk of Fame in the sidewalk and then unveiled the statue of the dancers. The fall of 2012, we installed our second pocket park on Broadway by Fernballs and included 3 art displays, one by local artist Hugh Lehman and another sculpture. We also purchased another sculpture that was located on 4th and Broadway, but has been temporarily moved and will be relocated this spring. We've added additional park benches to various business locations in our downtown. 2012, the Eel River Run, Riverside Park to Stonewall Park, including Stonewall Park and the Orange Grasses sculpture, was completed. 2013, Cass County Carousel hosted the National Carousel Modelers Convention. 2014, our third park located on Broadway at the PNC building was donated by the owners of the Cass City Center in memory of Kathy Dingo, and we will be installing art sculpture there this spring. 2014 in November, development and location and dedication of the Veterans Freedom Park in the downtown. 2015, Trine University moved downtown. 2015, this spring, we will be installing art murals in boarded windows that are being now done, and the Logansport High School Art Department is working on doing those for us. We're going to be adding sculptures, art murals on buildings, and we're really excited about what the spring is going to bring us. So how many of you knew all of those wonderful things that we've done since 2007? Now, we're also working, and hopefully we'll be able to do it this spring. I know that we have a committee that's working towards also adding flower baskets to the west side, so that when you come in through the west side or go or come, you'll also have those wonderful pink petunias that we've all grown to love. We've already proven that we are going to continue to improve Logansport, Cass County, because we all believe that we're already a stellar community. Why Logansport? We've been working towards this goal for way over 6 years, and we have come to the point that this element of the arts will not only help the downtown, but our largest piece of art in our community if we could have the addition of the carousel. We are geographically located along a regional trail from Fort Wayne to Lafayette of cultural amenities like Wabash and Delphi, who are already defined as stellar communities. We are becoming economically stronger and vibrant with a growing industrial base rooted in agricultural, manufacturing, and new energy technologies. You know, we are a strong people in Logansport. We're diverse and we're motivated. We have families, and this is a great place to live and raise a family. Why now? You know, why now? Because we are ready. More space to do more with and for the arts and the artisans in our community. Since the 175th anniversary of our great city, we have been working even harder to put together elements that will revitalize and help sell our community to citizens and visitors alike. Between the city and county, the not-for-profits, and private investments over the last decade, we are at the tipping point between being good and great. We need to do this now. We have the built infrastructure and motivation, and with all of our partners, we have built a strong foundation of planning and coordinating support that is now ready to implement. I can't thank you enough for all of the letters of support that we've been receiving. You know, I thought I would count them, but just didn't have time. I mean, we are getting an overwhelming support from our business owners in the community. We have the goals, we have the drive, and we have the tools necessary to succeed this year. And with the addition of a city center focused around the arts, it will portray to all who visit our community that we are what we all already know, we are a stellar community. And we are always reaching for something greater in Logansport, for a stellar future, for excellence. We're reaching to grab the brass ring, and we will continue to strive towards making our community the best it can be. Why Logansport? Why now? Because we are ready to grab the brass ring, and you know what? It's our time. Thank you so much.
Okay, now we're to the point that we wanted to tell you a little bit about the survey we've been working on that's been up since January, the beginning of January, and that we will be closing it this Thursday, March 12th. You can go to the cityoflogansport.org or loganslanding.com and take that survey, so we're trying to get some input on that. And then we actually have an email address also, stellarlogansport at cityoflogansport.org. So, if you got that, stellarlogansport at cityoflogansport.org. So obviously we're going to do some question and answers here, and I think we have plenty of people sitting that have been involved that can answer any question that you throw at us. But is there another slide, just real quick? Oh, if you have any additionals, there it is, stellarlogansport at cityoflogansport.org. And these are Chris Armstrong, obviously the Community Development Director. You can contact her, or Brent Mather, who's actually helping us put together the grant and the designation proposals. You can talk to either one of them. So questions and answer session. So if anybody has any questions, or if you no questions, go ahead.
Yeah, my name's Richard Gunder, and I'm on the I was on the carousel board for several years.
Louder,
And,
louder, please.
pardon?
Louder.
Oh, okay. I was on the carousel board for several years. I do a lot of volunteering down there, and I guess I've had several people ask me, I don't understand why that's in a floodplain and where you're putting it is not.
The maps were changed September of last year, and the DNR and FEMA, sorry. Our floodplain administrator right here, no. FEMA, not to throw you under the bus, Chris, at all. FEMA actually changed the maps this past year, and they do all the data analysis, so it's not actually done locally, it's done statewide. And they have taken the downtown, especially in this area. I think there's still a little down in this area, but they've taken it out of the 100-year floodplain, which Riverside is actually still in.
Okay, because when they built that in '94, the architect from Lafayette took that into consideration. That was in a floodplain. There's actually a sump hole under the carousel.
Right.
And that's what I was confused on.
Right, so when you build in a 100-year floodplain, you have to get approval through DNR first, and then you have to actually meet an elevation height, and that's why it's a little bit higher up, and all of those different elements, correct. And that's why it's still to this day has to be that way. But in the downtown, it's changed.
Be on it, on the carousel floor.
No, it will be, it can be on a flat surface. It's not within that 100-year floodplain, so it doesn't have to meet an elevation height.
The other thing was, I remember when they built the carousel and did all that, it was kind of a community that kind of came together. They used the McHale, and it was a rally of the community, a lot of free stuff and everything. And I volunteer a lot at the carousel, and I just question, this is going to be good for the carousel because I can see a lot of loss of money for the carousel. Number one, they ain't going to have the train. They're not going to have the reunions down there. They're not going to have the trail, the bridge. They're not going to have the park. So I can't see how this is going to benefit the carousel when I volunteered there, and I've seen Ernie here. He's volunteered a lot. When the train's bringing as much money on weekends than the carousel does. So you're eliminating a lot of our money, and we're taking it out of a park where families come down there, bring their families. They can go play miniature golf. They can do all this stuff. And now all they're going to be is stuck between Broadway and Market and the carousel. You're taking that park away from the carousel. It was in Fort Wayne in a park, it was at Spencer Park in a park, and it was now in Riverside. And I feel like this is a mistake, moving the carousel out of a park. And I think they're going to see the money loss on it. The other thing, what's the guarantee if somebody's wanting to rent the carousel, what's the rent of that building that's going to be affordable? So it's actually a bargain right now to go to the carousel because they work to keep the price down.
So those are all the things that are consideration, and that's why Barry said we've just looked into the opportunity to move forward with this plan. So those are things that are still being talked about, whether the train comes, whether they get their own portion to rent out and being able to do that themselves, and then the rest of it is done through a different organization. Those are all details that are being worked out. But the real reason that we're moving it is to give that visibility. It is going to be, in essence, still a park. And something that we've been working with the Parks Department on is possibly creating that, what currently is housing the carousel, and actually having kind of an indoor kids fun zone. I hate to use Walmart or McDonald's, but where they can go inside during bad weather or during the winter and use that facility. So I understand your concerns. Those are things we're still talking out with the carousel, and still things that aren't fully in the plan, but the idea is to give them the visibility and to provide the space for them to still rent out.
Thank you.
And should that be the decision? Should that be the decision that's made that the carousel is moved, then, you know, the one thing initially that I was most concerned about is, even though I wasn't here then, I do have a deep respect for the community because of all the people that I've been told over the years that really worked hard to raise the money for that facility. And you know, you've got the bricks all around it to prove it. You've got the hands on the wall. There's a lot of love in that building. And you know, from my feelings of respect, if we do have the opportunity to move it, we're going to take those things with us because they are part of the history of a carousel. And we're going to take the bricks and we're going to take the handprints. So, you know, I do want you to know that every step of the way with the consideration of this carousel being moved, that we're looking at it not only from, you know, what it can do for the downtown, but what it can do for all of those people who has put their heart and their soul into building that facility out there. We do have a deep respect for you.
Other questions? Yes.
I worked at a show, and in the last 2 weeks, I probably had over 200 phone calls at my house. And a lot of people were upset about moving the carousel. I mean, nothing against it, but when I was on the board when we moved it. I know why it's higher than everything else, because we was out of the floodplain where it's at now. I'm still getting at least 15 to 20 phone calls a day on my answering machine. People are mad about this carousel being moved out of Riverside Park.
And I wish those people were here today so that we could explain some of the reasons why and listen from the carousel itself. So, well, and everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Obviously, as we said earlier, it's just a plan. What we're trying to do is provide a better space and more visible for the carousel. You know, they can still, when we go through this plan, if we don't hit every element that they would like to see happen, then that's something that they can work out. Like I said, this is just a plan, and we still need to talk out all the details. Yes?
I'm going to have to speak on behalf of the carousel as well. The community, there's a lot of people in Logansport that donated a lot of money for that beautiful building that we're in right now. And there's going to be a lot of tears shed if this goes through. I look around here, and I volunteered to carousel as well, and I've served on the board several times. Haven't seen a lot of these people even there at the carousel. You know, and I think if you move it, you're not going to have, I don't think there's good parking down there where this is for a carousel at all. And I just think it needs to stay where it is.
Well, they're going to put civic center, they're going to put kiosks.
If there's a parking garage built right there, how many cars will fit in a 4-story or 3-story tiered parking garage? Because that might help answer like the parking issue that people are questioning.
But then how much are we going to charge for parking?
Right.
We have about 375 spaces 300 to 375 spaces that we can fit in that parking garage, depending on all of the different elements and infrastructure and those type of items.
How much would it be to park?
We're looking at a free parking. It's not going to cost to park. But the other thing is by the China Lane building, about 30 to 40 spaces there are still going to be kept. So, you know, those are going to be more your handicapped spaces and things where people can park right beside the building and be able to go in also.
I have a question. You're going to build a civic center to hold, what, 600 people? What are you going to do with McHale? Just throw that away for all the money that was invested there? Now you're going to have the carousel there, you're going to have the civic center there, so that's going to throw away McHale, it's going to throw Riverside Park away. You people don't care, except you're going to get this grant money. Where does that grant money coming from? Our pockets. In reality, it's coming from our pockets. You can stand there and smirk, I don't care.
No, I was just going to let you know that grant money does come from our pockets, and if we don't get it, someone else does. So that's one of the reasons why you apply for grants, is so that we can get some of our money back in our community. And that's kind of why I'm smirking, because it is our money. We want some back in our community. That's part of it. Now with the Civic Center part, it is not like McHale. It is not like the State Theater. What it is more of a reception hall. Currently what we have in our community with the, give me the name of the...
You have the Memorial Home and then you have
Memorial Home is actually closed. Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to say. We do not have the Memorial Home to rent out at this time. And so all you have are locations where you actually have to buy a plate to rent it out. Talking to the Hispanic community, they don't rent out those places because they like to cook their food. There's events that people actually have, what's that, Italian, where they want to cook their food. They want to have a space to be able to do that, to host their own wedding, have a buffet meal instead of actually buying the plates. And so this gives you that opportunity. So it's not McHale, it's not the State Theater, it's more of a banquet hall type of feel that we currently don't have the size in our community to hold.
Well, they are totally two different things. I mean, McHale is for our performing arts, and we all love McHale, and nothing that we're doing in the downtown is in any way, shape, or form going to take away from what McHale provides our community. As she said, it is a banquet hall. It's like, you know, I have a couple of events that I've done, one being Dancing with Our Stars. The absolute max that I could get in out at the airport this year was 400. Now, I still had to turn people away from attending that event. And, you know, there are no other places. I have an Italian event that I'm going to be doing this year. And I know I could sell at least 400 or more tickets for that, but there's not a place to have it. You know, we've been in contact with so many organizations throughout the community and have asked them, if we had this center, would you please tell us what your organization would be willing to do and to utilize the space? Because, you know, even in applying for this, we have to be able to tell Stellar what we're going to do with the space once it's built. We can't just build a space and leave it there. So we've been getting these replies back from all these different organizations listing all these things, and as of right now, I know we've got a full year calendar if we already had it. So, you know, again, it's not going to take away from McHale, and we don't want to take away from Riverside. If we moved the carousel here, then we're going to do something for the children in the building that's left there. So I do understand your concerns, and I do respect your opinions.
Pam, in this planning, a couple of questions. Is it contemplated that there is to be a conference center? You're talking about available space for meetings. You had a 400 limit out at the airport. Do you contemplate a conference center, and what would its capacity be? And a minor little matter, but I see a plaza where the drive-up banking is now for PNC. Does that mean that I have to go inside, or what's happening there?
We're shooting for a space that would accommodate up to 750 people.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
PNC is going to drive-through.
750 people.
750.
Okay.
Your PNC drive-through is going to be on this side connected to the PNC building, so you'll still be able to drive through.
Okay.
Okay.
I probably should introduce myself before just standing up to the podium. I'm Brent Mather with R&B Architects, and we've been helping work on this committee after having looked at several successful stellar designations. I think there's two things that we ought to talk about real quick. That what we're looking to do is to get a designation that recognizes, that the state recognizes that Logansport has already done these amazing programs that Pam was listing over the last 6-10 years, and that you're ready to do the next set of programs. Currently, the state, through the Office of Community and Rural Affairs, office that is led by the Lieutenant Governor, gives out many grant opportunities to communities like Logansport, but you compete. You compete for those opportunities with 30, 40, 60 other communities to get your own money back that your community has been investing for decades. It's very difficult. So you can look at your long-term master plan that gives you a 10 or 15-year vision, and you can slowly eat away at the pieces of that. When we started looking at the memorial home 5 years ago, we did a master plan to see what could you do to take the memorial home, revitalize it with restrooms, bring it up to the modern code, help it be even more useful with still retaining its historic nature. What we realized was that although we could get funding for $10,000 to do a plan, to do the actual $500,000 renovations that were necessary on a building like that, you were in a queue with 15 other communities, and it would be 8 years to 10 years before you were progressed far enough up to get that accomplished. What a stellar designation does is it pre-approves you. It means that the state has identified that Wabash and Delphi and Greencastle are all ready to go, and you're no longer competing with the other 30 communities out for the same amount of money. You are given that money. You still have to apply for it. You still have to turn the application in for a community center. You still have to turn the separate application in for facades. You still have to have public meetings, public input, do additional planning, make hard decisions, look at budgets, and determine that, well, we really have 10% less than we thought. So this isn't by any means we've already carved it in stone, and after you leave today, this is going to happen. Far from it. What they're looking to do is get the state to identify the fact that you are ready to have those public meetings. You are ready to have all of those decisions made together. So when we talk about individual details, is it exactly $2.2 million or is it 2.2.5, right? When we're looking at this for that That level of detail is not something that is determined at this point, because there are a lot of decisions to still be made. It's a designation that you're ready to get the grants. It's not actually the grant itself. That's a 3 to 5 year process. So we're looking at what can you do to accelerate 10 years of what your community has come together and said in their master plan that they want to do already. How do we get the state to recognize that they need to put all of that resource into Logansport instead of putting you in a queue that will take you 8 to 20 years to get through? Does that help a little with the explanation between a designation and a grant? And I really kind of like the way Aaron said it. It's getting your own money back. If you don't, somebody else sits in that queue and gets your money. You still have to have a great idea. You still have to have a great plan. You definitely have to spend that money carefully and judiciously and with a lot of public input. That's not what this letter of intent that goes in on the 16th of March does. This letter of intent gets the state to recognize that you're ready to have those conversations. It doesn't say that you're done.
What's the possibility of having this plan without moving the carousel? Don't we have enough interest in having a community affair, something to revitalize our whole community, have the new parking, everything else? But do we have to include the carousel? Because I think the carousel is better off where it is.
It's a plan. So, I mean, plans are still just plans. There's nothing that's being done.
When we put in this grant, I mean, the money for the grant, it includes the carousel. What happens if we decide not to put the carousel in?
If that's decided not to be done, then we reconfigure it, and there's still a phase. So you go through a phase process in this, and that you apply first round, and you get selected as the top 3 communities. And then during that round, you really dig into what is exactly going to happen, what exactly is it going to be placed, how much it's going to cost, where are these things going to, you know, how are they going to work? And so that phase is still there. So yes, we're planning on so it's a 4-month process that we have after we submit the first time. So at that time, yes, we're still at that point that we can discuss that.
2 things. If you can explain how this is going to affect the traffic flow downtown in the optimum scenario here, and also how you envision historic preservation working on the older buildings. Are there going to be any protections in place from the Historic Preservation Board to protect the older structures and to add value to those, like Memorial Home, for instance?
So you're wanting to know on the historic part, the current buildings that we have?
Right.
Okay.
That are already out there historic, that are identified as outstanding examples of downtown architecture, and what you're going to do about traffic flow.
Okay. On the historic part, I just want to touch on that a little bit. We've been trying to look at different opportunities through TIF dollars of being able to bricks and mortar, make sure these buildings aren't going to fall down, pieces of the bricks aren't going to fall off, what steps we would have to take to be able to do those type of things. So facades are definitely something that's important, and actually Okra can fund some of those facade programs as well, so that even though we currently have one, it's only matched 5,000, Okra actually takes the next step further and is quite a bit more detailed in actually fixing roofs and restoring the windows and those type of things. I'll let you talk in a second. Just to hit on the traffic real quick, the 4th Street corridor is the only portion of it that will be turned to 2-way. And so the traffic flow should really operate very similar, especially since we do not have the PNC parking coming in, or the drive-through coming in and out of that area. You're not going to see as much traffic. It's going to be flowing through Broadway. The Okra grant.
I think maybe one of the reasons Aaron asked me to come sometimes is because I won't shut up. So forgive me for it. There's another nuance to this stellar designation, which should be important, but it's a little hard to describe. when you go after these grants individually, and you are eligible for all of those small pieces I was talking about that take many, many, many years to get into the queue for, right? You're eligible for them. And every time you go after one, you have to put 10% of your own local money in, and they put 90% in. Or you have to put 20 in, and they put 80 in. Or you have to put 50 in, and they put 50 in. So you raise a small pile of money for the memorial home. That money you raise goes into the community foundation and has to get spent on the memorial home. It has to get spent on a facade, right? When you get into this designation, they allow you something that really helps you fund these projects a lot more efficiently. They look at the whole pile, and you're going to be doing $30 million in work amongst all of the projects. They ask you for a 10% match, $3 million, but you can pull that from anywhere you want. You don't have to raise just 10% for the memorial home and 20% for the NDOT road. You have to spend $3 million somewhere in your community, and they'll allow you to spread it out any way you want. So when we talk about a facade program, where you're going to be working with 25 individual building owners on smaller projects, right? And you want to have more control. The building owner probably would like to have a lot more input about what they can do with signage and colors, staying within the historic structure. It makes a lot of sense to take all of that money that you are going to be putting into the big pile, or that one pot, and technically spend it on the projects that are the hardest to fund by the state government, and then use 100% of their money on the projects that are the easiest for them to fund. You separate the money out differently when you get a lump designation as opposed to the individual grants. So instead of having to go to the individual building owner and say, I need $10,000 from you so I can save your building, and maybe the building owner doesn't have that kind of cash flow. It's a struggling business who's trying to work and do their things instead. But you know that you can raise more money for the community center than the required 10%. So what you do is you raise the extra money for the community center through a broad campaign. But then the building owner has to pay less or nothing because you've moved that money into one pile instead of running them separately. That's a hard explanation to make, but it is the other reason that it's important to look at a designation like this, not only accelerating it, but allowing you the financial freedom to combine those matching dollars, spend them where it's most efficient. Anything that is done on one of these projects is going to meet this U.S. Secretary of Interior standards for historic preservation. So this is a nationally recognized set of credential for how to preserve historic buildings. The state, through the Department of Natural Resources, reviews every one of the projects, just like it does with anything that state or city money is spent on, and helps you determine what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate within it. Did that help a little bit with the broad strokes?
I would just want to point one other thing about facades. In our downtown, we do have standards that they have to apply to. So we have to keep them historic, so it's not that a pole barn's going to come down. Those standards have been put in place in 2005. So the historic character of the community will be upheld with any infill, not just in this project, but any infill in downtown. Yes.
My name's Mercedes Brew. You've done a lot of work. You've gotten the cooperation of property owners in the city, you've gotten $16,000 from the city, and you have some beautiful drawings. This is no small task. And I want to recognize that and thank you for your desire to improve Logansport. You've asked for public comment, and here's mine. From the viewpoint of someone who has done what you are working on, competing for millions of dollars to benefit Logansport. Maybe I can give you some helpful advice. And this is about the location of the plaza and community center that is part of your plan. Can you hear me now? Okay. The people who will review your application will want evidence that the people of Logansport support your proposal. The perfect evidence, of course, would be the Logan's Landing 2010 Strategic Action Plan, which was the result of an intensive planning process involving a wide variety of downtown stakeholders. The 2010 plan does envision a plaza and a civic center like you are talking about here, but they were envisioned adjacent to the depot and the Little Turtle Waterway Gateway. Your new plan changes the location, increases the cost with the parking garage, and diminishes the impact of the Plaza and Civic Center because they are no longer adjacent to the depot and the gateway. You are going to have to show that the people of Logansport support this change that will cost more and give them less. There's been some confusion about the land adjacent to the depot and Little Turtle Waterway regarding the senior citizen housing project. That application for tax benefits failed. Perhaps one reason is that the state of Indiana does care whether your application is part of a strategic action plan. So, consider this. The next application for tax credits for senior citizen housing for the land adjacent to the depot and Little Turtle Waterway is not until November 2nd. So, that land is available for the purpose that is supported by the community and spelled out in the 2010 Strategic Action Plan and adopted by the City Council just last year. Here's my comment. Change your applications to the Stellar and Best Communities programs so that they are based on the 2010 Strategic Action Plan. Your application will be more credible, and your project will give the community and the grantors more bang for their buck. That would greatly increase your chances of success.
That was a lot of information. That's true. We do have a strategic plan for downtown. I think Becky's here somewhere. It's the downtown strategic plan. And it points out a lot of goals and visions for the community in the downtown area. Again, it is a plan, similar to this plan. Plans move around, plans change. And one of the ideas is that we have a permanent location for the farmers market is in that plan. It shows it on the site that's currently the farmers market. With that being said, it is a plan, and the goals and objectives is just to find a location for the farmers market. And so we have worked that into our plan. Again, plans are plans. I'm in the planning department. They change as things develop. And one of the things is the site that's currently talked about on the farmers market is not large enough to do all these elements, especially the Civic Center. It would not be able to hold that, and the parks would be lost with that. And the plan that's in place right now for the senior citizen center, senior housing, is not to touch those parks. And one of the things with that is I like to point out that it's 55 and older. So it's not a nursing home that's coming in. It's 55 and older, where people are walking in the community, enjoying the area in the community. And yes, we were not awarded this year, but most people that apply their first time are not awarded. There's a pool that, I mean, like Brent was saying earlier, you could be 8 years out before you actually get funded because there were so many people in that pool before you. So that's all I have. Anything else? Becky, do you have anything?
A couple of quick clarifications on the housing applications, because they're a little bit different than grants. They're not actually grants. They're tax credits that are given to private individuals. So a private development corporation comes and is given by the state a series of tax credits that they then sell on the open market to have enough money to be able to build or renovate a structure. So when you talk about the housing component, it isn't a city or a county that's applying. It's a private individual that then seeks the city's approval. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? How do we make it the best thing for the city? They occasionally ask the city to do some assistance. Could you please fix the sidewalks around our building so that our project is more viable? They often give things back to the city. And in this particular process, the application for housing on the corner of 4th and Market included public restrooms
for the use of the Little Turtle Creek Park waterway, actually improving the use of that park adjacent. So it was a partnership, but it's not a financial partnership. It's an agreement. That piece of land currently has a purchase agreement. So this private developer already has the opportunity to apply another year on that piece of land for this. The major reason that they did not score well against the other competing people for tax credits, there were 42 applications and 11 were awarded. Who has the math fast enough? That's what, 25%? Did I do it pretty good? Don't, you know, watch out for an architect who speaks a lot and doesn't know math, right? So you have about a 25% chance. The state rewards people that are using existing properties. They are really keying into the fact that there are a lot of abandoned open buildings in historic downtowns, and that would probably be the first, highest, best use for any of the funding they can assist with. Buildings much like the old Captain Logan Hotel, where your first floor has retail and you want people activating the street front. You've got a little bit of a parking issue right in that area, especially if you're talking about putting 30, 40 apartments on the second, third, and fourth floors. But originally it was a hotel. That was the use 100 years ago when the building was initially structured. Those are the projects that the state has written their qualified action plan to really reward. The other kind of project is suiting a need that is imminent in a community where you have such a need for senior housing or multifamily housing or student housing, and you don't have an available building of the right size. It would be difficult to look for buildings even in downtown Logansport that could hold 40 to 60 apartments, which is the sweet spot for operating an apartment building. Usually you find buildings that'll hold 20 to 35, and at that point it isn't efficient for a private business to hire a full-time maintenance, full-time leasing agent. They tend to fail on their own business models. So the best place for the private individual is between 40 and 60 units. It's hard to find buildings that are that large without combining multiple buildings. For that reason, and we had a lot of dialogue with Buckeye developers on this particular property at 3rd and Market, not because we had any input in their plans. Frankly, they already have their ball moving forward, and they were moving on an application for November 2nd of this last year, well before this committee met. Those purchase agreements were in place. So we were working around some of the things that we knew were already possibly going to be happening on 4th and Market, and that they still have the right to purchase the land and do for another year. So I've totally lost my train of thought. Where was I going with that? But you hate it when that happens. There are multiple reasons, and I'm hoping to help understand the nuance. The housing isn't a grant. The housing is private businesses going after this sort of financing structure, which helps them build in your community. And that the city is not giving money to private individuals for housing at all. Just the opposite. The private individuals are usually, and in this case with the restrooms, making accommodations so that the plan works better for the city. They get rated on 1 to 5 by a mayor's office and a community on how much are you giving back to our community by doing things like restrooms. And then how are we helping with the farmers market, making sure that it has a viable place to still function, and now has restrooms, thankfully. Are there extra questions on housing and that sort of tax credit funding, or the kind of uses that go into a senior building? Awesome. There are attorneys who spend 8 years trying to figure all that out. You know, I just run on the surface of it.
I'd just like to make a personal comment. Chris, do me a favor, put the cursor on my building, please. I'm Tom Partridge. I own the Pear Tree Gallery, and Chris will show you my building. It's right in the middle of all this stuff, okay? Now, I agree with some of the stuff people have said today. I've lived in this town 63 years, my whole life. I agree with some of the stuff Mercedes says. I agree something with what you say about the carousel, but I'm going to give you my 2 cents worth about where I think this community ought to be. And I am on the board of Logan's Landing, so I need to tell you all that, okay? But I don't go along with everything that we all think about. And one of the things was the housing across the street from my building in the farmers market area, okay? It wasn't that I was against housing. in downtown Logansport. It's just that I think that that piece of property is more valuable to our city than a housing project to a private developer. I love that plan. I think it's great. I can go with that plan. Mercedes says it's not what we agreed upon in 2010. Maybe it isn't, but like Aaron says, plans change. Everything changes eventually. That carousel started in Fort Wayne. It went to Spencer Park. It went to Riverside Park. It can come downtown. It's called change, okay? It's called change, and this town needs change, okay? I rode my bike down to that carousel, I don't know how many times when I was a kid, and tried for that brass ring. Has a lot of memories. Memories change. I was downtown to Indianapolis yesterday at Children's Museum. They have a dental carousel in there. My little granddaughter rode it like crazy.
How much it cost? $5?
No, it was $1. It was $1.
No, it's more.
I was there. I was there. Okay. And it, you know, it's in a building. It's inside, and it was just packed with people wanting to ride it. It didn't really need a park. It was in an area. It could be in that area, and you know, everybody in town would know where it is. Think how many people say, well, where's the carousel at? They come from out of town. How do you get there? Where is it? It would have so much exposure there. People could drive through town. I could see signage for that carousel, and people go, oh, we're going through town, but there's a Denzel carousel. Let's stop. Think of the use it would get there. We all would know where it was. Now, granted, I agree with some of the stuff, like Richard said, you know, that it's down there with the train and golf and the ballpark and that kind of thing, and I understand that. If you're down there, you can play, you can do this.
And a new bridge.
Well, there's a bridge there too, but it is still a park and it will survive. This, you know, this city needs a heart. We don't have a courthouse square. Okay, that could be a heart. It could be something that would really get us going. I'm ready to roll dice. I've lived here my whole life. I remember when my mom and dad had their business. Remember the Flatiron building?
Yep.
Cool building. My mom and dad started there. I can remember Friday nights, just busy as all get out. Okay, everybody came to town. But we've lost a lot of stuff downtown. We all know what we've lost. We've lost a lot of buildings, but we got to build. We got to do something. And I think now my thought, got to throw this out there. My thought is to take that carousel and put it in the farmer's market lot, connect it to the trail. It's big enough to do it. It could even have a little parking back there. Get rid of that Salvation Army building and make that whole area kind of cool. And then build your civic center with what you need there. But now you got the carousel in an area when there's festivals and stuff going on, kids can just walk right to it. That's just my 2 cents worth.
With a 750 capacity conference center downtown and a parking facility downtown, those are two huge pluses for this current idea, and it endorses also the representation of this city then having a heart. Decide on the carousel issues later. Work out those issues later.
Pat Shaver, Tom, like you, I grew up in the park. Actually, I grew up on the south side of 1400 block of High Street. I walked to that park every day. I played basketball down there every day, baseball. The carousel was there. And when I first heard this, I was against moving the carousel. The more I found out about this, especially when I found out about the whole floodplain problem, and I started thinking about that. You may remember this. When I was a young kid, there was an ice breakup. There was ice almost into that softball field down there. And when I thought about that, with the floodplain thing, suddenly, I was all for this thing being downtown, where it could be more good for the city, more attraction. You know, Riverside Park is a great city park. It does not have any flow of traffic for people coming from out of town. None at all. And that spot up there would, whether it's where you have it now or on the other side of the property or market. I have a gentleman, of course, the gentleman from the board, carousel board. Just out of curiosity, if something, Lord forbid, but if something should happen major to that carousel right now where it needed major dollars for repair, what would happen?
As far as what?
Let's say the whole thing, something broke down, the building broke down, you'd have to make major repairs. I'm just guessing this, but I'm guessing you would not have the money to make those repairs right now, would you?
It depends on what it is, but the carousel, you can't even put a value on it. No.
There, you can't.
It has to be private.
Yeah, right, exactly. That was my point. You have to go back to the same people that donated all the money that once before to give you the money again to make those major repairs that need to be made.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I want to thank you for the time and effort that you have put into this to make Logansport a destination. I've raised here in Latrobe my entire life, and we need something to keep our children here in the city. We need something to draw people in, and I applaud you and I thank you for your efforts. Thank you.
Well, if there's no more questions, I mean, feel free to come up and look at the plan closer if you'd like. Or thank you for all of you to come tonight and voice your concerns. And Pam wrote down tons and tons of things, so we'll take that to our committee and discuss it and see where we can go. Thank you.